Why adaptive music? Well, I think it goes back to one of the earliest goals we had for Full Auto, which was it's supposed to be an emergent game. Now, a lot of people have talked about emergent games, emergent gameplay, and finally with the next-gen systems we're able to have a game that actually responds in many different ways to the user's input as opposed to vice versa. That's sort of last-gen. We rather reverse that relationship and have a game respond to whatever the user chooses to do. With the emergent action in Full Auto, with all of the crashes, with the stunts, with the destruction, we really wanted a score that wasn't just a jukebox, because any game that just plays pop songs over and over again can't respond to all the emergent action in the game. So we set forth very early on to have a very almost cinematic score. Any game that has the kind of action, the very movie-like action, like Jerry Bruckheimer scale action scenes like our game does, needs to have music that plays up all the different emotions, right? Anytime you do a cool stunt, anytime you have a big jump, anytime you blow up an opponent, see him flying through the sky, anytime you bring a huge skyscraper down, those are moments that we really wanted the music to underpin, just like a cinematic score does. So it just made sense for us to aim high and have a truly interactive, adaptive music score. Yeah, diving into adaptive music was a risk, but we felt it was a very manageable risk. Because when you look at it, all you have to do is identify the emotions that a movie score tries to emphasize in the on-screen action. So for our game, it was very, very easy. It was speed. It was the feeling of winning or losing a race. It was the feeling of shooting and destroying other things and being shot at and being destroyed. So those are very, very easy emotions to quantify in a game and to show those mood swings in the game. So when we talked about these ideas, it was very easy for Michelle, our audio lead, and for Andrew, our audio programmer, to wrap their heads around these concepts. And so it was very easy for us to prototype these ideas and get it going in the game very, very quickly.
When I first looked at what they had done with Full Auto when they first brought me in, my face kind of fell because I thought, oh my God. A full-on racing game, full-on combat game, everything's happening all at once. How am I ever going to deal with this? Because my big motivation in design, my big preference for design is to carve out space and tonality so everything can have its own time, and to create beats and rhythm so that there's gameplay moments that are built up. So it's just not this constant sound, constant shooting, constant driving, so that you actually get texture, tonality, contour, space, reprieve for the player, because the player can't live in a completely noisy environment, otherwise it creates ear fatigue, because that's a big one with racing games, ear fatigue, because the engines are always going and people get very tired. So when I first started playing the game, I had the sound off and just, well, there wasn't really any sound in the game at the time. And I was playing Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring. It was a revolutionary piece in 1917, you know, and it caused quite the furore. Classical music has its appeal to me on certain levels, not that we would put that in the game, but it's more of how can rhythm and soundscape lend itself to the gameplay experience. So it's basically driving the game a lot that I thought, well, this will be an interesting thing just to see how it feels to play. And then I quickly put that away, because you just you grab for ideas, you grab for moods and thoughts. You don't want to really lock yourself to any one way of thinking. Sleep deprivation has its benefits, because sometimes you kind of get these wild ideas, right? And then you start breathing heavy into the microphone and finding out, oh yeah, that kind of works for something. It was a really amazing experience to work with Rom DePrisco, who did all the music mastering and also did a fair number of compositions, and John Room, who did all the compositions and kind of set the tone. And he really got it spot on. I would talk about the game and kind of how messy it really is, because you are just taking down the whole world and everything's happening at once. So how do you, and focusing, how we focus that. The last thing I wanted to do was, in past racing games I've worked on, it's just music's thrown in at the last minute and it's just full-on barrage of, you know, whatever they decide is hit music at the time, and it's just full on all the time. And I wanted to avoid that, because as soon as you do that, you decrease all your dynamic range in a game. and you don't play up moments. You can't play up moments and beats. There's also dips and valleys so that they can be played in and out. There's movement and motion and contours so that things can play off each other, so the sound can take precedence one moment or the music can take more precedence depending on what the action is. And I knew that because this company was committed to doing adaptive music and committed to working with composers, I knew that we could work together to create a sonic space that could be textured and layered, and we could lend itself to having emphasis on engines when it was important, emphasis on weapons when it was important, and the world all falling apart when it was important.
The more progress you make in a race, the more you're winning or the more you're losing, the songs will change. The more you destroy, you'll hear the songs actually get more aggro. You'll hear more guitars, you'll hear more intense tracks that come through, that rise to the top of the mix. If you're losing, if you're not being very aggressive, the score is going to reflect that. You're going to feel the difference. You never hear exactly the same song twice in the same way. Whether you perceive it or not, consciously perceive it or not, you are hearing the song slightly different, and it actually is reacting to what you're doing in the game. It actually comes from about 15 to 20 core compositions, but you're hearing them in many, many different ways, so it's virtually unlimited. When you play Full Auto, I'd really suggest that you crank it up because the music is so awesome. We've lived with these tunes for several months, and we don't get sick of them. It's amazing. Like other games I've worked on, like we just want to turn the music off. But I would really, really encourage people to crank up the music, crank up the sound. The entire sonic experience in Full Auto is amazing. I think the amazing thing about the adaptive music is it actually doesn't draw attention to itself. That actually does mirror what's going on screen and what you're feeling at any given point in time in a race. So I think what you'll notice in the music in Full Auto is that you don't notice it. You're just feeling it.
Unrec has a long history. In the very beginning, what I did was I was thinking, it'd be really nice to have a debug tool wherein I could record the state of the game and be able to play it back. So when something weird happens, I can see exactly what happens. If we do this every frame, we can scroll anywhere in the game throughout past events. So I could take a look at what was happening during, say, a collision, so I can see frame by frame how things are reacting, or seeing an event happen from different angles. Like you see the collision happening from there, and maybe it didn't look right, and you look for another angle, and you might get some insight into what's happening. So initially, it was a debug tool. As we started to work on the crash demo for GDC and E3, we wanted to create a more cinematic feel to it. And this word kind of floated around that we had some ways of rewinding time, all right? Because people had seen me playing around with this debug feature. So what we did was, our producer at the time, our directors thought, this would be really cool if we could just show this crash from different angles and the same event over and over again. Just like in a movie where often they'll replay a scene in different shots, slow motion, maybe at various speeds. That's where we first incorporated it into I guess a product or something that was shown. It went over really well because we had a single car crash, but there's a lot of drama in the buildup of it in terms of how you set up the car and how the car drives and how when it finally hits a wall or hits another car and explosions and everything goes flying, and being able to see that over and over again from different angles and being able to rewind back and forth in time to see like things crunch and then uncrunch. That was really cool. Then we thought, it'd be really cool if we could somehow incorporate this into our game. And William, really, when he saw it, he really liked it. He thought, oh, this is a gem. This is really cool. So he really pushed hard on it. Initially, we were kind of skeptical because we thought, this is going to be hard to support. It takes a lot of memory. There's a lot of work involved. William was really adamant about it, and it was like a key feature he wanted.
I love racing games, but one of the things I hate the most about racing games is when I make a mistake. The first thing I do is I pause the game, I hit restart, I have to start the race all over again. So going into Full Auto, we really wanted to come up with a way to avoid that, because restarting is no fun.
So we, maintained it and maintained it throughout development, and they grew into the Unwreck feature.
A game feature that now, once we've tried it, being able to rewind mistakes, being able to undo missed turns, being able to come back from the dead, as it were, in the middle of a race, it's now indispensable.
Initially, it took a long time before it was actually fun to use. In the beginning, it was mostly a curiosity, mostly something like, hey, look, I can rewind, it looks really cool, and it was really fun, but it didn't really have, a good place in the game. It's the kind of thing that you would play around with for about maybe half an hour or so and then never use again. But we kept on working on it, and I think that, it's really just a success on William's part to actually making it an integral and very effective part of the game.
This is one of the things that I'm most proud of about Full Auto, and something that you're probably going to see a lot of people copy.
I think it's difficult, but I do think a lot of people are going to rip it off eventually, and there's nothing we can really do about it. But hey, at least we were the first, and I think racing games will be better because of it. Because I've always, I enjoy racing a lot more when I can have an unrack. I think it's a new feature for the genre, but once you've used it, you miss it. And every other game I play, I want it.
We can't live without it. Now, when I go and play other racing games I like, I reach for the unwreck button, and it's not there for me.
I think that unwreck would have been a lot more difficult on last generation. We do a lot of tricks for compression. It uses a fair bit of memory. There's a lot of aspects to it that are pretty computationally intensive, and require a lot of memory access and that sort of thing. And it would have been a lot harder to do on last generation. It's really impressive because just all this stuff going on, you get a chance to witness it all going backwards through time, and then be able to do it again and have, drive slightly differently and have a whole new chain of events happen. So I think other people can copy the feature as it is, but whether or not they have the whole package, like whether or not they have this much stuff going on, I don't think anyone's going to do that for a while.